Hello everyone, Weather Jamaica here. Welcome to this updated video on the weather across Jamaica and the Caribbean. It is Saturday evening, June 10, 2023. Now before we jump into it, please ensure that you guys like the video, share it, subscribe and tap the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I post a brand new video. Feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section letting me know what the weather has been like in your area recently. Also, feel free to ask any weather-related question that you might have about the future of the weather in your specific area. I respond to all comments and I really live for this stuff. Alright, so let us take a look at the surface map of the Atlantic for this evening. We can still see that we have numerous tropical waves right there across the southern sections of the main development region, not to mention affecting sections of northern South America. And we can also see a stalled out cold front right there across portions of the southern United States, as well as that high pressure ridge across portions of the North Atlantic that's still sending a lot of easterly trade winds across the main development region into the Caribbean. Taking a look at the visible satellite images before the sun went down, we can see the clouds associated with those tropical waves right there that are lined up all the way from Africa into northern South America associated with those tropical waves. We can also see the low-level patches of clouds moving from east to west across the Atlantic into the Caribbean, all courtesy of that easterly trade wind brought about by that high pressure ridge. And we can also see the clouds associated with the cold front and the numerous troughs still affecting portions of the Greater Antilles, including Cuba, the Bahamas, as well as portions of the southern United States. We'll be talking more about the weather across the Caribbean later on. Let's focus on what has been happening across Jamaica for the past 24 hours. So we can see that another post was made at 3:15 p.m. this morning, 3:15 a.m. this morning. So early this morning we can see that we had some amount of overcast skies, showers and thunderstorms still affecting portions of western Jamaica, all courtesy of the clouds left back from that trough that has been affecting the island for the past couple of days. However, we saw for ourselves that today, as well as majority of yesterday, we didn't have much in the way of heavy rainfall. The heaviest weather seemed to have spared Jamaica, and we're indeed grateful for that, even although we do need the rainfall in some spots where we have that hydrological drought. But we'll take all the rainfall that we can get, and we're grateful for the rainfall that we've received so far. So we can see, if we take a look at the current infrared satellite images, for the most part sections of central and western Jamaica was cloudy. Eastern Jamaica, we saw a lot of sunshine today across those spots. Taking a look at the temperature for tonight, we can see that we have 27 degrees Celsius in Montego Bay, 27 degrees Celsius in Kingston, and as usual, as the night progresses, these temperatures should be getting lower. Taking a look at the temperature forecast for tomorrow, we can see that both the Euro and the GFS are showing 18th on Sunday. That's about 1 p.m. on Sunday. And we can see on both maps that Jamaica is embedded in some slight yellow shades. And we can see on the key that that represents at least 1 degree Celsius above average. And we know for a fact that in the month of June, across Jamaica, we usually receive up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit for the average temperatures across the island. And we know that 90 degrees Fahrenheit is about the equivalent of 32.2 degrees Celsius. So if we're going to be receiving at least 1 degree Celsius above average temperatures for tomorrow, we should be receiving anywhere from 32 to 33.2 degrees Celsius. Alright, so let us take a look at the dry air map across the Atlantic. We can see on the key at the bottom, the dry air is represented by the yellows, and then the more intense it gets as it goes towards the right. So oranges, then the reds, and the white within those reds represent the driest air. We can see that Jamaica is embedded in some amount of dry air at this time, as indicated by the yellows and oranges. However, we see more dry air across sections of the Gulf of Mexico and the Eastern Caribbean right there. As relates to the Saharan dust map, 2 p.m. on Sunday, we can see some slight browns that represent some hazy conditions across the Central Caribbean, including Jamaica. But it was worse than this. Right now it's starting to clear out, especially across the Eastern Caribbean, and we're indeed grateful for that. Let us take a look at the wave forecast for tomorrow. We can see that across the island, well, surrounding the island tomorrow, So southern parishes, eastern parishes, northern parishes. It's only on the northwest that we see the least amount of wave heights that represent anywhere from 0 to 0.5 of a meter, while everywhere else should be receiving 1 to 1.5 meter wave heights. And that's due to the fact that we'll be receiving an east-southeasterly flow of winds across the island for tomorrow. And we see that on both the Euro and the GFS for 12 p.m. on Sunday. And the wind should be averaging anywhere from 10 to 15 knots at most. And we know that wherever the least amount of winds are located, as indicated by the blue shades that represent anywhere from 0 to maybe even 15 or 0 to even 10 knot winds, we know that we're going to be having the air pile up. We know that we're going to be having the cumulus clouds becoming cumulonimbus clouds and formulating some amount of afternoon convection. And we see those light shades of blue right there across sections of northern and western parishes. So wherever we have that blue shades, that's where we're going to be having that afternoon convection. So northern parishes, western parishes as usual. And we see the consensus on both the Euro and the GFS models. And we know that when we have consensus or agreement like this, when both maps are showing the same thing, then the chances of it actually happening are much higher. And considering that we're finally out of the woods as it relates to the southwesterly wind shear, seems that we're going to be getting more of a northwesterly or west-northwesterly flow across the island for tomorrow, with the upper level winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So any afternoon convection that we get on the north coast, and those clouds become cumulonimbus clouds on the north coast, the upper level wind shear is going to be pushing all of that down back towards the southeast across sections of some southern parishes. So whatever rain they get on the north coast tomorrow afternoon, the upper level winds will be blowing those high cold cloud tops off towards the south and the east to bring more overcast skies to sections of some southern parishes. Let us take a look at the precipitation forecast for tomorrow. We can see that as early as 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is actually 5 a.m. Jamaica time, we see some blues that represent rainfall across sections of some southern and eastern parishes, and it makes sense considering that we're having the winds come in from off the sea from the east-southeast across sections of eastern and southern parishes. So the rainfall, the clouds are going to be coming in from off the sea and coming inland, which explains why eastern and southern parishes are forecast to receive rainfall that early with all of those blue shadings. And we see that both the Euro and the GFS models are showing the same thing. So the chances of it actually happening are much higher because of this. So definitely sections of maybe Portland, St. Thomas, maybe spilling into sections of Kingston and St. Andrew, as well as sections of St. Catherine and Clarendon right there. So southern parishes as well as eastern parishes. Skipping ahead to about 3 hours later, these maps are showing 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is actually 8 a.m. Jamaica time, and we still see much of the same. Blues that represent rainfall across sections of some southern and eastern parishes right there. So the very same areas that we just mentioned, from St. Thomas and Portland in the east, Kingston and St. Andrew as well as maybe spilling into sections of Manchester, and we've already seen it across sections of Clarendon and St. Catherine, so maybe some of that is still in store for them. Taking a look at the afternoon forecast now, these maps are showing 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is actually 2 p.m. Jamaica time. And what do we see happening now? We still see both models showing blues that represent rainfall across eastern Jamaica, St. Thomas and Portland, but now we see that it's starting to spread across sections of some central and western parishes. The Euro is showing more blues across some southern and northern parishes, more central and western parishes, but the GFS is making more sense, showing the blues that represent rainfall across sections of mostly northern and western parishes. And this makes perfect sense considering that we have that east-southeasterly flow of wind across the island. So just like what we mentioned earlier, with the sea breeze coming in from the east-southeast, wherever we have the blue shades that represent the least amount of winds, that's where we're going to be having that buildup of cumulus clouds becoming cumulonimbus clouds. So having the afternoon rainfall, the convection across sections of northern and western parishes would make much more perfect sense like what the GFS is showing. So we'll see exactly what unfolds with that tomorrow. Either way, both the accumulated precipitation forecast from the Euro and the GFS models are in consensus that especially eastern Jamaica, St. Thomas, Portland, going to be receiving some amount of rainfall tomorrow. GFS making more sense with the rainfall across western and northern Jamaica. Not so much sense being made on the Euro except for what is shown on the eastern portion of the island. Either way, we're indeed grateful for the rainfall that we're going to be receiving, considering that we're in the month of June and we usually receive up to 133 millimeters of rainfall during this month. So hopefully it puts more of a dent in the current hydrological drought that we're receiving. Alright, so that's it for the forecast across Jamaica. Let's focus our attention on the rest of the Caribbean. So we can see that all of those clouds that we had across portions of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands are starting to dissipate at this time. We still have some leftover clouds across sections of Cuba, the Yucatan Peninsula, the Bahamas associated with that trough. We can also see a lot of clouds associated with the tropical wave coming into sections of eastern Venezuela, as well as portions of Trinidad and Tobago as well as sections of Panama and Costa Rica, as well as Nicaragua getting in on some deep convection right now. Let's just take a look at the northeastern Caribbean as we see the Doppler radar images are showing some amount of scattered showers here and there. Sections of western and southern Puerto Rico definitely gotten on some amount of rainfall for today. Not so much rainfall across majority of the Leeward Islands, so nothing across Antigua and Barbuda, Anguilla. Had some amount of rainfall coming in the section of the US and the British Virgin Islands though. You can also see some greens that represent rainfall coming into sections of Guadeloupe as well as sections of Dominica. Taking a look at the Barbados radar, we can see that for the most part majority of the rainfall, or isolated rainfall that is, has been passing to the south of the island, moving from east to west. So we indeed had some amount of rainfall affecting sections of the Grenadine Islands, maybe even spilling into sections of Grenada. Taking a look at the wider view of Doppler radar images, we can indeed see some rainfall right there coming into sections of Trinidad and Tobago, just like what we saw in the satellite images just now. We can also see some rainfall coming into sections of French Guiana, Suriname, as well as Guyana, not to mention some rainfall across sections of Honduras, the Yucatan Peninsula, Cuba, and the Bahamas, just like what we saw in the satellite images. As it relates to temperature forecast, we can see that we're going to be having average to above normal temperatures stretching all the way from the eastern Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico, with the below average temperatures right there across the waters of the northern section of the main development region, not to mention the northern portions of the Gulf of Mexico. Taking a look at the Saharan dust forecast for 2 p.m. on Sunday, we can see that for majority of the Caribbean, the Saharan dust is starting to clear out. We know that the Saharan dust is represented by the light shades of browns, but it's not that robust at this time. The darkest shades of brown is what we would look for if we're having some tremendous hazy weather, and we see majority of that across portions of the eastern main development region as well as sections of Africa, and we hope it stays there. Taking a look at the wave forecast for tomorrow, we can see that 12 p.m. on Sunday on both the Euro and the GFS still has 1 to 1.5 meter wave height across majority of the Caribbean, with the Gulf of Mexico as well as sections of the waters to the north of Cuba receiving anywhere from 0 to 0.5 of a meter. And that's due to the fact that we'll be receiving some easterly winds across the Caribbean tomorrow, averaging anywhere from 10 to 20 knot winds at most. We know that the yellows represent 25 knot winds as well, and we see that to the north of Colombia as usual, with anywhere from 0 to maybe up to at least 10 knot wind across majority of the Gulf of Mexico right there. As it relates to the rainfall forecast, we still see that we don't have much of anything to receive across sections of the Leeward Islands. However, we can see some consensus with some slight rainfall across sections of Guadeloupe, Dominica, maybe St. Lucia, and Martinique. We can also see some rainfall coming into sections of maybe St. Vincent and the Grenadines, not so much for Barbados, maybe Grenada, sections of Trinidad and Tobago, definitely Trinidad and Tobago. Can even see up to 1 inch of rainfall, and we see that on both the Euro and the GFS models. Consensus is very much evident. Taking a look at the southern portion of the basin, we can see that anywhere from French Guiana, Suriname, Guyana, southern Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Honduras are forecast to receive some amount of rainfall. And remember, all of these maps are showing all the rainfall that's expected from now up until 10 p.m. on Sunday, so they're definitely going to be receiving rainfall. If they're not already receiving the rainfall right now, they're going to be receiving some amount of rainfall before the clock strikes 10 on Sunday evening. We can also see some rainfall being predicted across sections of the Yucatan Peninsula, sections of the Cayman Islands, Cuba as well, not to mention sections of the Bahamas and southern Florida. Alright, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching.